Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to the latest edition of News Talk. This is the live show where you get to join in and share your views and opinions about some really hot topics. I'm joined by David. Hello, David.
Hi, Stephanie. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, as usual, we're going to be talking about three hot topics in the news. We'll give you our opinions and we want to hear yours.
Absolutely. So every week, three different stories. Let's find out what our stories are going to be today. Over to you, David.
Yeah, number one. I wonder who this famous person is, but we want to know what is the latest first for Donald Trump? What has he done or what is happening that has never happened before for him?
Very controversial figure, isn't he, Donald Trump? So
Very.
interested to know what you think about him. And as David said, any idea what he's done for the first time? Not necessarily a good thing. There's a clue there. Story number two, something completely different. We're asking, what will anyone born after 2009 not be able to do in the UK?
So this is anybody who is 15 and under. What will they not be able to do in the future? And then finally, really surprising this one, we want to know which city experienced its largest amount of rainfall in 75 years since records began.
Yes, a really surprising story, number three. It's been making headlines. So, have you seen the headlines? Maybe you live in that part of the world. If you know the answers to any of these, type in the chat, let us know. We want this session to be interactive, it's completely unscripted. So, let us know what you think. But we're going to start off with story number one.
Yeah.
Good evening to everybody. I can see lots of people joining. Hello, Yusuf, Amelia, and Lara joining as well.
And
Welcome.
Salah and Francisco Javier, thanks very much for joining us. And so, Donald Trump, do we love him or hate him? He is very polemic. People tend to be black and white about what they think of him. Of course, he's got many, many, many millions of fans and followers. And as we know, the US election in November is clearly going to be between this man and Joe Biden. I wonder who you would vote for.
Absolutely. I've typed the question in the chat there. What do you think of Donald Trump? So do let us know. Remember, this is all about you practicing your English. So do type in the chat and let us know. All opinions are welcome.
Yeah, and anybody, any ideas? What is he? What has happened? Why is he so much in the news? This is a former US president, remember. What is happening to him at this very moment?
Absolutely. And I gave you a clue earlier. It's not a good thing for him. So he's got himself into some trouble, and it's all coming to a head now. So have you seen this story? As we say, chat to us. Do use the comments box. Let us know any information you have about this story that's making headlines all over the world.
Yeah, and one clue is about hush money. And hush money is when you pay somebody or so that they don't talk to other people about what happened. And hush is a verb. Shh, hush means that you don't speak.
Absolutely. Well, Yusuf, yes, it's a hot competition. Nobody can guess the results of the next election. Yes, who's going to win? Of course, there's going to be a lot of scandal, I'm sure, a lot of accusations before we actually get to the results. Um, yeah, well, let us know what you think. I mean, this is what we want. We want you to tell us what you think about these stories. So, yes, whatever you think, please do let us know.
Yeah, and yes, I think Francisco. Many people think he is an arrogant man. But yes, as also he has lots and lots of fans. Um, so. Yeah, this shall we let's explain what has happened. They they possibly there's the issue about the upcoming elections. Um, but this is really about criminality. Okay, thank you, Adriana. Yes, he is going to trial soon, and it has been extremely difficult to choose the jury. But he is it's the first time a former US president has stood trial on criminal charges after leaving office. And what what is claimed is that he paid something like $130,000 in a payment in hush money to a porn to a porn star called Stormy Daniels in the approach in the run up to the 2016 presidential election, and that was in order to stop her claims, to stop her explaining that talking about possible extramarital affair that they had years earlier.
Yes, and of course, this is, we've got a nice expression, haven't we? The tip of the iceberg, because of course, other people have also come forward alleging that he's had children outside of his marriage. I think that one of the doormen of Trump Towers has made an accusation as well. So all these kind of accusations have come up, and it's alleged that he's paid, as David said, this hush money to keep people quiet, to stop these stories from making the headlines.
So there is something like 34 felony counts of falsifying, of changing your business records related to the hush money. And of course, he has pleaded not guilty. However, and this is what I found really interesting, if they find him guilty, if he is found guilty by a jury, then he can go to prison for up to 4 years.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a felony in America, and the you can receive 4 years in prison. That's the maximum. So of course he's accused of paying this hush money and falsifying business records. So there's a lot to defend there.
And do we know, what do we think? If he is found guilty, and this will be before the election, will he be able to stand for president? Do we know? What do we think? Yes or no? Will that stop him from standing for president in November if he is found guilty?
Well, I think, as somebody said earlier, he's quite well known for his supreme confidence or arrogance, however you want to look at it. So yes, Yusuf, I wouldn't be surprised, even if he's found guilty, if he still wants to stand for president.
You are
Um,
absolutely right, Youssef. Yes, he will still be able to stand as president, as in an election. So he could be sitting in a prison while everybody's voting for him, and that is, according to the US Constitution, that is permissible.
it would be a very strange situation, wouldn't it? Another first. I mean, I think already in his very colourful um, life so far, Donald Trump has achieved many firsts. Of course, he became famous for his television show The Apprentice. That sort of catapulted him to global fame, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But of course, there are many people, especially Americans, who possibly share your opinion, Amelia, that he is innocent, and that, this is all a big conspiracy. It's a plot by Biden, and the followers of Biden to keep control, to stay in power.
And of course, we're not judging either way. We're just merely commenting on stories that are happening around the world. So, we're not commenting either way. It's just a very hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, yes. And he is a very rich man. Yes, he does own, I don't know about half of real estate, but certainly a lot of real estate in the US. a very well, goodness me, I don't know. I'm not sure if I would like to be having to live in America during this period, actually, but
I
yeah,
think when we talked about a story, we talked about the election before, didn't we, David? And I think something that came up is that a lot of Americans were saying it's a very poor choice. They're not happy with either. If
true.
that's the choice they've got, they weren't happy with either candidate. But of course, that's what they end up, the
Yeah,
choice is.
yes, you're right. I mean, to many people, it is a crazy situation if he were able to stand for president, but that's what we are living with. Let's have a look at the vocabulary, shall we?
Absolutely. So the latest first for Donald Trump. Well, it's the first time a former president is going to stand trial on criminal charges after having left office.
And one of the accusations is that he paid this hush money. Hush, very onomatopoeic. It's a lovely sound. Hush, hush money. And that's money that you give to someone to make them keep something secret.
We also mentioned the word felony. Now, felony usually, I've added in there, usually US law. It's not commonly used in British English, but a very common word in American English. It's a serious crime that can be punished by 1 or more years in prison. So if he's found guilty of this felony, he could face up to 4 years in prison.
Yep. And we also said an accusation against him is that he falsified the accounts. And if you falsify something, then you change a written record or information so that it's no longer true. Obviously, you get the word false. It is false. And the verb is to falsify.
Very good. Moving swiftly on then to story number 2. Now, we're coming across to the UK, so closer to home for you and me, David.
Yes.
Um, but I don't think we're
Yes.
going to be affected by this because this is anyone born after 2009. What will we not be able to do in the UK? Any ideas?
So this has just been a vote in by MPs in the UK in Parliament, and they have eventually unanimously agreed to ban something to prohibit youngsters from doing something, and they're starting at the age of 15 and down. So anybody born in the future will never be able to do this legally in the UK. Any ideas?
And it's something that we talked about in the past, wasn't it, David, with reference to New Zealand, which tried to pass this law as well.
Yeah, yeah, well done. With the answers, you are absolutely right. Well done. This is about smoking. So our MPs, our members of parliament, have supported a ban so that anybody born after 2009 cannot buy cigarettes.
So I think this is a really interesting one, isn't it? What do we think about this? Because I think on the face of it, this sounds like a very sensible idea. I mean, we know that smoking is bad for us, so therefore, making this illegal, surely that is a good thing. However, there are a lot of MPs who are arguing on the other side, saying that actually we should be living in a free country. We should give people the freedom of choice.
Good, good. I mean, we're getting lots of support in favour of the ban, but some MPs, like Stephanie is saying, said this this limits personal freedom, and people should be able to decide whether they want to smoke or not.
Exactly, and I think it's that one of them made a point that we want to live in a free society where people are free to make both good and bad decisions. And they say that we risk infantilizing people if we take that away from them. So I think this is a really interesting point.
It is indeed. But the counter argument to that, that is said by the health secretary, our health secretary, she says there is no liberty, there is no freedom in addiction. And that's the problem. Smoking is hugely, hugely addictive. And the problem in particular is to protect youngsters, children from starting to smoke. So if you can do that, then it's not too late, because quite often it is too late by the time that, a youngster is 14, 15, 16, they can be addicted.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people surveyed, a lot of smokers surveyed, did say that yes, they started very young, and three-quarters of them saying that if they could turn back time, they would not have started in the first place.
Yes, yes, and absolutely, Youssef, very good. Yes, this is also connected to vaping, um, because while there's this big movement encouraging people to vape instead of smoke, the problem is that it seems to be these manufacturers are targeting children and encouraging children to vape with the colors, with the tastes, and everything. So the children then become addicted to vaping.
Absolutely. So trying to put these restrictions on flavors and packaging to make it less appealing for young people. I mean, I think if you look at the statistics, it's something like 1 in 5 has tried vaping, and the number of people using vapes has tripled in the past 3 years.
And again, this is the claim. This is the industry, because they know they're losing with tobacco smoking. They're investing in marketing to get youngsters, to get children to buy these vapes. So yeah, the numbers are skyrocketing.
And the scary thing is, I mean, we know that tobacco kills around 8 million people a year, smoking. But of course, vaping, a lot of the results of that are unknown. People actually don't know at the moment the effects of vaping. It's this sort of unknown situation.
Indeed, great. It seems that lots of people are in support of that. What about in your countries? I presume is smoking legal for everybody? Is there do you have to be 18, or can anybody smoke? Of course, part of our problem, people say, is how are you going to enforce it? What are we going to do? Have policemen coming round to the shops, or I don't know. It'll be quite difficult.
Well, this is very interesting. I think they're going to, I mean, this is where the difficulty comes, isn't it? They're going to give on the spot fines for shops caught selling tobacco or vapes to children. But of course, you've got to catch them. And the fines, I have to say, are very low. I think it's £100, which
Uh,
is pretty low.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, good points being made. Yes, they will be able to get cigars or cigarettes through other means, but general consumption will eventually end. And Youssef saying in his country, people have moved to disposable vapes. That's another big issue, isn't it? Because that is terrible for the environment as well.
And yes, Amelia, I'm not saying I disagree with the ban. I'm just letting you know the other side of the argument, what some of the MPs are saying to counter this. I'm not saying that I disagree with the ban, but obviously always important to consider both sides of that. And that is what a lot of MPs are arguing against this.
Yeah, yeah, and it will be interesting to see if it does go through. I think so, because of course as we saw in New Zealand, at the end, that it never became law because the tobacco lobby, presumably, or there was so much pressure, and because smoking raises so much income for the country that people weren't prepared. The government wasn't prepared to lose that income.
Yeah, they're very powerful force, aren't they? And of course, money talks in a lot of situations. So it will be very interesting to see what happens. But I think, a very positive indication that the country's trying to do something, because so many secondary health problems caused by tobacco. And of course, thinking about the knock-on effect on the health system for treating people who've got these secondary effects caused by smoking. And young people, are they really making an informed decision?
Absolutely. If I were an MP, if I had been given the vote, I would have definitely been in favour of it.
Absolutely, me too. Just to clarify, I agree with the ban. Let's have a look at some vocabulary here, shall we? So yes, as we all said, MPs have supported plans to ban anyone born after 2009 from buying cigarettes.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And we talked about MPs, and we have 635 MPs in our country. An MP is a member of parliament. And we have MEPs as well. And these are members of the European Parliament, or were. Of course, now we don't because we're not in Europe.
The second word we've got here is addiction. So this is the noun. You are or you can be addicted to something. Now, of course, in this instance, we're talking about an addiction to nicotine. If you're addicted to something, you have an inability. You can't stop doing or using something. And we especially use this when we're referring to something that causes you harm.
Yeah, and we never asked actually, does anybody smoke? Smoke or indeed vape? Because we've got this now, it's very, very common in our country, and vaping is the use of e-cigarettes or other devices that lets you breathe in nicotine or other drugs as vapor rather than smoke.
So I think we'll move on to story number 3, a different part of the world. So we've gone from, I'm giving you a clue here, we've gone from America to Europe, but where are we going next? That's the question. Have a look at this picture. I mean, it's shocking, isn't it?
It
Shocking
is.
picture.
And especially if you live there and have lived through this, I mean, very, very surprising. Well, I was very surprised when I saw this in the news. And it did cause absolute chaos in the city, and wider, and disruption, particularly travel disruption. And I think even now there's some knock-on effects. It's still, the city is still suffering.
Absolutely. I think the volume of things like flights cancelled, it was something like 270 cancelled, 370 delayed. And of course, as you said, David, the knock-on effect, everything's in the wrong place. But I mean, aside from the disruption, as we mentioned, there's the loss of life in this kind of situation. So if you live in this part of the world, would be very interested to find out what your thoughts are.
Yeah, yeah, great. And thank you, Youssef, and thank you, Simon. Yes, this is Dubai. So yeah, and there was absolute chaos, as the city experienced its heaviest, nice, rainfall in 75 years since records began. And this is why there was something like nearly 400 flights that were cancelled or delayed. So you can imagine all those people, because Dubai is the second busiest airport in the world, I believe. So you can imagine all those people, because the airport itself was flooded. So there was nowhere to go and no food, no drink in the end. I think it was really, really very, very bad for people.
So Yusuf saying all the malls were underwater. So yes, not just the airport affected, but shopping centres as well. And of course, a lot of shopping underground. So a lot of the malls were underwater as well.
Yeah, and interesting. I mean, of course, it was Dubai, but we should remember that actually in Oman, neighboring Oman, I think like something like 1,400 people had to be rescued and evacuated to shelters, and there were a number of deaths in that
Yeah,
country.
20. I think overall the death toll was 20 due to these flash floods.
But well, and thank you, Ud's moving onto a very good point here. So, yeah, this was a massive flooding. I think Amelia, you mentioned that as well, which was created by this rain. But one of the questions that was raised was it cloud seeding that caused this to happen? And cloud seeding, had you heard of cloud seeding before, Stephanie?
Well, I knew that there was this concept, but I didn't actually know what the vocabulary was for it. I had heard of this concept of trying to manipulate the weather, but I didn't know the actual vocabulary. So I learned something as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I'd heard of the opposite because I think, sometimes when you don't want rain and you don't want it to spoil an event, and possibly this happened in China, I believe, then you can actually disperse the clouds. You can the so that so those so that you get no rain. But this is the opposite. The idea was to encourage water vapor to form and then get rain. Youssef thinks it was the cloud seeding. I've read reports that say from experts, at best, it would have had a minor effect on the storm if it did happen, but wasn't really the cause of it.
Yes, I mean, it's a very interesting concept, this cloud seeding. I mean, it's, as we said, it's manipulating the weather, which sounds really scary, I have to say. I mean, obviously, they're doing it to help with water shortages. An aircraft drop small particles into clouds so that the water vapor can condense and therefore create this rain. But as David said, the experts say this wasn't the cause of these flash floods.
But what I found interesting as well was I thought, I wonder how much rain they actually get in Dubai normally in millimeters. Any ideas, anybody? And then I looked at what they get in Dubai and what we get in the UK, and compared them. Any thoughts? Any ideas on that?
So I'm just typing in David's question. How much is the annual rainfall in Dubai? Any ideas? I actually know because I looked it up. So I won't answer this question, but do have a guess. What do you think? How much is the annual rainfall? And is it less than the UK? That's a good question. Because it's true, isn't it, David? I think we've got that stereotype that everyone thinks it always rains here in the UK.
Well, in comparison to Dubai, that's possibly quite quite accurate. And then, of course, there are places where it rains an awful lot more, and of course, there's a place where it doesn't rain at all. So, um, so actually, they had, yeah, the rain of a year. I think that's what people are saying. They had 1 year's worth of rain in one day. So on average, Dubai typically receives only 97 millimeters worth of rain, right? And I don't know how much that is really, but it's not a lot.
Not a lot, no.
And in comparison, the UK, we get 1,368 millimeters of rain. So that's like,
A lot more.
yes, yes, yes. Um, but any guesses where there's no rain at all?
Is it somewhere in South America?
Yes,
In Chile, I would
yes,
guess.
yes.
In the Atacama Desert.
Wow. Yes, absolutely correct. They
Well, I have to say, I didn't research that. That was just off the top of my head. So I'm feeling quite pleased about
in
that.
the Atacama Desert in Chile, they had recorded no rain. And in contrast, there is a place, and I won't, Masinram, something like that, in
In India,
northern India, yeah, where they recorded 12,000 millimeters of rain. So we've got some really big extremes.
I think what's interesting here, though, a good point to mention is often, of course, some countries having it all in one, in a very condensed period. They have very heavy rainfall, whereas perhaps in the UK we have lighter rain, but more often.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, the big issue for I think Dubai is how they adapt to this. If this is going to be a norm, how does the infrastructure manage it? What are they going to do about it so that they can manage when they have these terrible events?
Let's look at some of the vocabulary then from this topic. So, yes, we're talking about flooding in the Gulf region. chaos at Dubai airport. And of course, as David said, Oman as well, having deadly storms.
Yeah, and as lots of you pointed out, there were floods in Dubai, and a flood is a large amount of water covering an area that is usually normally dry.
And often when we're talking about disasters, we use the word toll. So we can talk about the death toll or the numbers of death or injured people that are caused in a particular negative situation like a war or a natural disaster.
Yeah, and then we also talked about the fact that these storms disrupted life in Dubai. So you've got the verb to disrupt, regular verb disrupted in the past, and of course, the noun is disruption. It caused disruption to normal life in Dubai.
Absolutely. So we covered three very different topics in three very different parts of the world there. Very, very interesting. And as we always say, it's your comments that really make this session so interesting for us. And we really like to read what you think. So big thank you to all of you for taking part today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for all your very insightful and interesting comments. And thank you for joining us. And hopefully, we will see you next week with three brand new topics that we don't know what they will be yet.
Same time, same place next week. Please do join us then. Thank you for now, everybody. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye bye.